Did you say your internet's slow? Is that what's going on? I think we need to promote Ms. Zuniga. She may have just joined.
Okay, there she is. Okay, are we ready to go?
Yes.
Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. Apologize, our closed session took a little longer than we anticipated. Roll call, Trustee Andrade Zuniga.
Present.
Trustees Land.
Present.
Okay, Trustees Lees Dwyer.
Present.
Trustee Hanley.
Yes.
And I am here, Trustee Griffin. Pledge of Allegiance. Dr. Black, you're in the captain's chair this evening. Would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Honored, yes. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, boy. Well done. We have our Spanish interpreter this evening, Enrique Montaldo. And for those who would like to attend the meeting in Spanish, that option is available. Enrique, if you can please communicate that when we open the interpreter room. Thank you. And Mr. Montaldo, would you let everybody know that that the Spanish translation is available?
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Enrique Montaldo. Si me están escuchando es porque están asistiendo al canal de español para la traducción de esta reunión de hoy. Muchas gracias. Okay.
There it goes. Okay. A report out from closed session. In closed session, the board, upon motion of Trustee Hanley and seconded by President Griffin, moved to approve a special education settlement with a vote of 5-0. Staff has requested this informational. Staff has requested to pull item J4 and bring it back to a future meeting. And okay. And there's something else I have to do under, I believe under N9. So, okay, we can move on. As I understand it, I better read this. This is a public meeting of the San Mateo Union High School District Board of Trustees. If you wish to make a comment about an agenda item or during the public comment section at the beginning of this agenda, please send an email to comments@SMUHSD.org. That's comments@SMUHSD.org with your name, email address, and your Zoom name, if different, and the item under which you would like to comment. The board president will call on you. Please note that comments are limited to 3 minutes. The board president may increase or decrease the time allowed for public presentation, depending on the topic and the number of persons wishing to be heard. At this point, up till a couple of minutes ago, it's my understanding there was no public comment. I gotta check my,
That's correct.
yeah, okay, thank you. Board comments. Does anybody wish to boy, Trustee Hanley?
I just had a short comment. I just really wanted to encourage everybody to get vaccinated, particularly the students coming back to school. I attended the conference call with the county manager. We've made a very good start with getting 12 to 15-year-olds vaccinated in San Mateo County. We just need to continue the momentum. I just remind everybody, especially if you're doing the Moderna or Pfizer vaccination, it does take 5 or 6 weeks to get fully vaccinated. So make that plan if you so that you're fully vaccinated by the first part of August when you come back to school. I think the best way that we're going to get ourselves very close to normal school operations is to have, as many people as possible vaccinated, as many students as possible vaccinated when we begin operations back in August. And so I really want to encourage everybody to do that. As I said, San Mateo County's off to a very good start in doing that. Let's just keep up the momentum. Thank you.
Trustee Andrade Zuniga.
Thank you. Yes, I first wanted to acknowledge our roommate Tish at Lonely Lands that we're on, that our district sits on. And I also wanted to say, in observance of Pride Month, yay, the Pride Center, San Mateo County is having a series of different workshops that are free and open to everyone. So they have different topics related to, excuse me, to the LGBTQ plus community. And I just wanted to also encourage people, like Trustee Haley had said, to please vaccinate your students, your young people, all of our high school kids, please get vaccinated. It's free. And there's also through the county, if anybody cannot leave their homes for any reason, there's a program for mobile vaccinations as well. Thank you.
Trustee Land.
I just wanted to get clarification on J4. So I was going to actually talk about J4 in our Italian program. I don't know if you guys everyone's aware, or the district's aware, but in the Burlingame School District, they are eliminating the Italian program. And I think that's going to have dramatic implications on us. And I don't know if they've communicated with us and how that's going. So I have some very concerns, and constituents in my area have contacted me and let me know that they have very big concerns about the elimination of the Italian program at the elementary district. And I'm worried about what that implication is for our Italian program, which is very strong and has been very strong for many years. So I really hope that we have some communications on this, and that maybe we can help them reconsider how they might be able to make it work. So that's my only comments for today.
Trustees Lees Dwyer.
I just wanted to say that it has been really nice to see so many of the reports in the Daily Journal about the athletes and softball and baseball and basketball and all of the competitions that the students are finishing up now and able to have track, all of these things. And it's really nice to see that. I actually was on the Burlingame campus today. It feels wide open. The bathrooms are open. People are running. Practices are being held. I saw football out there doing conditioning. And it's really nice to see the new normal and to see students and people outside. I know the mask, people are wearing it, people aren't. And on the 15th, hopefully we'll all be able to save them for later or something. But it's really nice to be outside and see so many kids and people engaged in good activities. So I just wanted to share that.
Okay, I just got one comment. I guess I'm the only one that it seems like a long time ago, but the graduations were really enjoyable. I had not been with that many people. I did Aragon, and it was a whole football field full of people. And I guess the day before Middle College was there. Mm-hmm. And the same day, probably, Hillsdale had 3 different ceremonies. I managed to make one of them and had a virtual virtual speech that was put up, I guess, for their virtual ceremony. But it was so nice to be with
True.
people. And I've got to say, particularly with Aragon and Hillsdale, there were strict rules, and everybody was supposed to follow the guidelines, and everybody was well behaved right up till the time they flipped those tassels, and they were supposed to march out in line 6 feet apart. It ended up being a giant mob in the middle of either the courtyard or in the football field, and there was all that hugging and kissing and just hanging on contact. I did not make any of the contact. I would not say that, I would not have wanted to try to stop them because there was so much emotion going on during those ceremonies. It was really touching. So I enjoyed it.
That's true. Yeah.
Okay. The consent agenda, we're pulling J4, which Trustee Land made a good, excellent comment to. Is there a motion or any questions?
I have
or
a
comments?
question. I have a question on a contract in that the contracts. I don't know when they actually got put on. I would hope in the future when they're not on by Sunday, if someone could shoot an email saying we've posted the contracts, because I keep checking and looking for them, and I would really appreciate having time to review all of them. There were so many on this thing this time, and it was really difficult to sit and read them all. But there was one particular one that for $663 and $616, and I didn't actually see the contract on there. And I know that it's for food and it's something we've done before, but I really would like to look at it so that I understand it. So I'm not going to try to hold up that approval because we've done this before with the same organization. So I don't really question it, but I do want to have the opportunity to look at the contract. And then I had a question as to whether there was a contract on there, which I could not find, for the field facility consultant that I believe Yancey hired. And I haven't really seen any paperwork on that at all, but I know that he's online. The gentleman is working for us. So I'm assuming that someone's hired him. But I wanted to see that contract as well as if there's any other hiring materials on that. And I couldn't find it on the contracts listed. Oh, the other thing on the contracts, if you could put the documents in the same order as the list, it would be really helpful, and maybe number them, because when you try to go down them, it's really difficult because some they're not in the order in which they're listed. So that would be another thing to be really helpful. So I move approval. I just want to have my answers.
Okay, maybe the administration will make a note and follow up with trustees Lee Dwyer. So we've got a motion on the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Trustee Land with the second. Trustee Andrade Zuniga, how do you vote?
Vote yes.
Trustee Land,
Yes.
Trustee Lee Dwyer,
Yes.
Trustee Hanley,
Yes,
and Trustee Griffin, I'll vote yes. So that the consent agenda passes 5-0. And we're going to move on to, I think it's, hold on.
Regular reports of the superintendent.
Yeah, I print out a hard copy and I have to flip pages. I have notes on this. So report of the superintendent.
Thank you very much. I am zooming into this meeting from Roanoke, Virginia, where I'm in the same bedroom that I grew up in. So it's interesting to be there. I've got a black eye here, and it's not because where I grew up is a tough town, and you come into town for 3 days and you get a black eye, but it was an athletic accident. But it's really nice to be home, and I know, like a lot of people, I'm visiting family for the first time since the pandemic, or 2 years. So it's, I appreciate the board letting me do this and the miracles of technology. It was mentioned about vaccines. We have been engaged in, at our schools, at 3 of our schools, Mills, Cap, and Hillsdale. We have been administering vaccines for students and giving away swag from for the schools, and then having some students there to to meet and things like that. And at each one of the schools, they brought in 200 doses for us, and we were able to get 200 kids their first dose at each of those schools. We haven't been in contact with the county about further vaccine opportunities, but we're certainly available for that. And we did a lot of communications and worked with our partner districts on this as well. So we're pleased with that work. It's going to, as has been mentioned, it's just going to be a continual process. On those, one of the things that we've considered, and I welcome board input, is, as you know, we're doing some summer enrichment opportunities here. And one of the thoughts that we've had on this is to say to kids, if you want to participate, you can come if you are fully vaccinated, or you show a test, a negative COVID test within the past 3 or 4 days, just to encourage students to get a vaccine. We haven't made a decision on that, but that's something that we're looking at. I was mentioned about graduations. For those people who tuned in online, the district spent a lot of money being flexible about graduations. We offered a virtual graduation, and then we used an outside firm to help us on this. And I think the quality of the experience for relatives, back home or in other places, was really high. And so there's definitely some pieces from this year's graduations that we can take from the experience. Because of the way we did graduations this year, I was able to attend 8 graduations, which is a lot more than usual. And I can say that the speeches and the work that the principals and assistant principals did there was just absolutely top flight. We are pleased that the athletics continues to go through. The baseball, I think, starts next week. So our students are having experiences that extend well into the summer, and it won't be long before they're back for practices. As Ms. Lees-Dwyer mentioned, kids are already out there getting fired up for the fall, and just seeing that experience. I had the same experience as you, Ms. Lees-Dwyer, that it's just so encouraging to see students doing that. And then all the pieces of the school year seem to be coming into place for a fairly normal 21-22 school year. I wanted to mention that we sort of closed up with our administrators the fall year, the 2021 year, on June 1st, the day after Memorial Day. We had our consultants, Shane Saphir and Joe Truss, work with us. We had some other activities. We had lunch together as an administrative team. Everybody was on the Mills campus, and it was just so nice to honor folks. Roberta came back. Roberta Beacon came to the event. So we got to say goodbye to her, and she went on and on about how much she was enjoying retirement. And then we also had just a couple of people where we've really got a team that's almost everybody coming back next year. We only have 2 or 3 people that will be new on our administrative team this year. So it was nice to say goodbye to them. Mr. Land mentioned the Italian program. We'll have a report for you in a weekly or at the next board meeting on that topic, because it is something that we're interested in. I also want to mention that tonight's board meeting, typically the meetings in June are short, and they cover items that we've spent a lot of time during the year preparing. So Mr. Simmons, Mr. Hawkins will both be giving presentations here, but we're going to try to keep those presentations short, because much of the information is really, really important, but it's not the kind of thing that, you know, for somebody who's tuning in tonight, they might think we don't spend that much time and we go over it in a hurry, but they've really been the subject of 3 or 4 board meetings that have brought us here to tonight. So tonight we're discussing the budget and the LCAP, and then we're bring those back on the 24th for approval. So I think that ends my report, Mr. Griffin.
Okay, thank you. Report of the student board member. Is there a student board member? Okay.
We have neither a student board member or the DTA or CSEA. So I believe Ms. Chan is our only representative, and she's from the adult school.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. So we'll pass on K2 and K3 and K4, and we will go to the report of the San Mateo Adult School Teachers Association. Ms. Chen. Good evening.
Good evening, Dr. Skelly, administrators, and members of the board. I'm Betty Chen, representing the San Mateo Adult School Teachers Union tonight. The Green Team, led by union member and San Mateo Adult School teacher Cynthia Eagleton, continues to learn and teach about sustainability. And the Green Team will be leading a City of San Mateo sponsored cleanup focusing on the area around San Mateo Adult School and San Mateo High School this Saturday, June 12th at 10 a.m. It will involve cleaning the area surrounding our campus and where trash blows down the drains and empties into the beautiful bay. Through the pandemic, Green Team has been hosting educators and scientists, many of them local. Next week, native filmmaker Michael Palm Preston will visit the Green Team for a question and answer session about his work. One word, sour ma'am, meaning sacred water. ESL students have been contacting governors and legislators advocating for the adult school funding. Lastly, we would like to thank the school board for voting to fly the pride flag at all schools. Equality to all is very important. Thank you.
You're on mute, Mr. Griffin.
Sorry. We're going to move on to a presentation of the LCAP, L1.
Mr. Simmons, you're up.
Sorry, I'm speaking with the mute on. Sorry about that. Good evening, board members and district cabinet. This is our annual public hearing for the Local Control Accountability Plan. The intention of tonight's presentation is to share a couple of key elements of the draft LCAP that has been attached to tonight's agenda, along with a few other pieces. Next slide, please. In this presentation, we will review the documents attached to the agenda, review the new LCAP's priority areas, and ultimately focus on a review of the key new metrics and stakeholder engagement that brought us to this point in the process. We will then have our formal public hearing and receive feedback from the board and public. Next slide, please. This slide is a summary of the documents that are attached to this item on the agenda, and there were quite a few. One of the documents that we were required to report on was the 2017 to 20 LCAP, and you have that document here. We'll use some of that information in that document from 2018-19 to actually set some of the baselines for the new LCAP in light of the unique nature of the last 15 months. The second document is the actual draft LCAP for the 21-24 school years, and this document is a more focused document than in years past. We have reviewed the key elements at board meetings in April and May, as Dr. Skelly just referred to. So we're not going to go into the details tonight, but please know that we plan to make investments in a robust academic program and are using general fund resources as well as the significant resources in the Expanded Learning Opportunity Grant to address what might be obvious, but certainly what we anticipate to be somewhat significant needs of students in what we anticipate to be one of the most unique returns to school ever. Next slide, please. So this slide is just a quick reminder of the broad priority areas. If you will recall, in our previous LCAP over the last, really the first 2 cycles of 6 years, we had 3 LCAP goals. We now have 4 LCAP priority areas: authentic relationships, safe and connected communities, engaging, relevant, and rigorous learning for every student every day, I would add, and supporting and empowering staff. And inside these specific priority areas, we have 20 discrete metrics, which actually is a decline in the number of things we're going to be paying attention to from our previous LCAP, which actually had 24 discrete metrics. And really, we really have tried to, through a series of processes that started actually 2 years ago, tried to winnow down to really the most high leverage metrics that we could identify. Next slide, please. So under the topic of authentic relationships, we've really kind of narrowed in on 3 discrete metrics we want to pay attention to. And this was, again, this whole process has really been had the benefit of a variety of input from lots of different stakeholder groups, but in particular, our district equity advisory. And so our first one really is about making sure that we increase the number of non-white, multiple race certificated staff. Also, that we're going to improve our panorama survey. This is a new survey that we started this last year to show an increase in the percentage of responding favorably about their relationships with teachers. And then lastly, that we will have some parent data. We'll set a baseline with parent data this next year around the extent to which we are providing effective opportunities for engagement, but also effective communication with our families, because that has been a key theme that's come out of our inquiry this spring. Next slide, please. And so this next piece around safe and connected communities, again, and there are definitions and sort of specific actions and services we're going to be providing, and those are delineated inside the LCAP. But the metrics that I wanted to make sure that we spoke to tonight around safe and connected communities are, a couple of these are both required, but also ones that we've been tracking for some time, and that is continuing to see a decline in the rate of suspension and expulsion for students. Also seeing a decline in the overall number of days lost to suspension. I will say that Mr. Scatena reported back in October to you all via a weekly that we actually had been on track in the 2019-20 school year to actually be significantly lower, and then we ended school in March in terms of in-person instruction, and so we don't know how that would have turned out, but we were certainly in line to have made some significant improvements in the numbers of days lost to instruction due to suspension in 2019-20. We also look to, and again, across all these measures, we really are looking to see, we will be reporting to you and all stakeholders on kind of the disaggregation of this data, so that, yes, overall, we have some specific metrics that we're paying attention to, but we also want to be looking at the specific key subgroups that you'll see listed in each of these. In addition to improving the rates of decreasing suspensions, we also plan to decrease our rates of chronic absenteeism overall by 10%. We also plan to improve positive student response on the panorama survey on these specific questions that are listed here. And then also our last piece is we do plan to, and we're utilizing some of the expanded learning opportunity grant to invest in a student leadership for equity training that will be enacted next year. And so we look to increase year over year students who are engaged in that training. Next year, please. Next slide, please. This third area is really the focus on is sort of focused on teaching and learning, kind of the core thing we do in the district. And so that is around engaging, relevant, and rigorous learning for every student. And so we're going to, a couple of these are kind of continuations of the past. We're really using now the college and career indicator as our kind of core North Star as a district. And that is this tool this metric that the state of California created about 4 years ago that basically has students meeting A to G eligibility, or taking a couple of college classes and passing them with a C or better, or completing a CTE pathway and passing one or both sections of the California Assessment of Student Performance. And so the point of it is that really is becoming our metric to kind of guide the overall success of our students in the district. And so right now we're at about 62% of students are successfully meeting that criteria, and we look to grow that significantly over the next number of years. In addition, we continue to look to sort of the upstream measures then. One of those is our 10th graders being on track for graduation. We have a significantly high number of 10th graders annually who are on track. And even in the 2021 school year, we actually still had about 85% of students meeting that criteria in the 10th grade, in spite of all of the challenges of the fall. And so we look to continue to have that measure and continue to increase that measure. The next one is then around our 11th graders meeting or exceeding the standard on the English language arts and math assessments in the CASP assessment. Those are required metrics. There's some of these are things we are sort of required to have as part of the state accountability system, but they're also things that we think are important. Then the last couple are continuing our effort to make sure that we have students engaged in rigorous coursework. And so we've expanded this one a little bit in the past. It's always been kind of increasing and ensuring that, ultimately all students take one or at least one AP or IB class, but we've added to that dual enrollment offerings because those are essentially the same. So those are courses where students are taking concurrently a course in our high school and getting community college credit for that course. And so we look to use that to increase the participation in that as well. And then we have 3 very specific measures related to English learners. One is to see at least 1 year of growth on the English learner assessment that we administer, the state assessment. We also want to increase the percentage of ELs rising at least 1 level in our 3 levels that we teach. There's an ELD 1, 2, and 3 section. We anticipate we look to see students making those growths every year. And then lastly, making sure that we have an increase in the percentage of ELs that are reclassified, meaning that they are English language proficient year over year. And then lastly, we look to develop over the next couple of years some performance-based assessments within our specific discrete subjects. This has been an ongoing need that we've had as a district to develop some common assessments within our subject areas. And so we look to do that, but really focusing those on performance-based assessment as opposed to more traditional sort of, multiple choice questions about a bunch of, facts that are important, but not necessarily the key skills that we want students to be able to demonstrate. And we believe that a performance-based assessment will give us a much better measure of students' performance on that kind of assessment. Next slide, please. And then lastly, this is really our focus on this. These metrics are really focused on making sure that our staff, that we recruit and retain high quality staff, but then also we support them effectively. And so we've got some in there about our teachers continuing to develop to have master's degrees, and some specific support for that is inside the LCAP. Pardon me. Also, making sure that we have teacher satisfaction. And so we just administered actually at the end of the school year. And we're just going to be looking at the results next week of an extensive teacher and full staff survey with Panorama. In addition, we will have a measure regarding the implementation of anti-racist teaching practices across the district. That'll be a measure that we'll set next year. And then the last couple, and again, that's tied to our key initiative next year around engaging in anti-racist teaching practices. Lastly, the last couple here are around making sure that we have school-wide universal support, that we sort of see that teachers are engaging and enacting the common practices that we look to see as at every school site. And then the last one is really around supporting our teachers of color, because a significant part of what we are engaged at the front end of the process of making sure that we get a more diverse teaching staff, but we also want to make sure that we're supporting them as they proceed in their careers with us. And so we'll have a survey, we'll set a baseline this next year around how they're feeling about their experience as teachers in our district. Next slide, please. So that is sort of a summary of that concludes the summary of the metrics tied to our key goals. I'll lastly sort of finish up quickly by just saying we had sort of three core pieces of community and family engagement this spring around the LCAP. The District English Language Advisory Committee met. They meet monthly, as you know. They also gave a great report to you all a couple months ago. And so we met with them explicitly and kind of incorporated a number of their ideas into this plan, and specifically related to kind of making much more transparent and clear the processes that students need to navigate to be successful as they transition through high school and into college, and also how to access our resources. Then we also met, as I said previously, a number of times with our equity advisory, but the most recent item that we've done is we engaged in a thought exchange protocol. It's a new sort of platform that we have partnered with this year for a variety of things. And most recently then was getting asynchronous feedback from from our stakeholders about different themes. Next slide, please. So this is a quick summary of what we learned from the thought exchange. Again, this is the most kind of hot off the presses information. We've talked about the feedback from the other groups previously. So that was a question that we first asked, was what are the most important things our district needs to do to support all students over the next few years? And so next slide, please. This is a quick summary of the demographics of the participation. And you can see how many folks participated and then how many, and when they talk about ratings there, they're really talking about people. The interesting thing about this particular platform is that participants kind of weigh in with a thought, and then other people actually vote on kind of the salience of that point for them. So it's an interesting new technology that I think is a great way to kind of have a focus group in real time with people from across the district without actually making them come to a meeting. Next slide, please. And so what you'll see here is this is just a demographic breakdown of who the different participants were. Next slide, please. And this is a slide of sort of the representation from across the school sites. And then the last slide, please. One more, thank you. And so these were some of the kind of key kind of thoughts that came out of the presentation, of the thought exchange. These are things that we definitely are paying attention to. And certainly you can see in that first sort of big idea about classes being more fun and engaging, that's absolutely in line with our third priority area. We certainly anticipate making sure that students are provided the kind of mental health support. There's certainly we're making some new investments in those for next year. And then lastly, there's, a need for making sure that the classroom ratios really kind of create quality learning. And then lastly, that students really have the kind of support that they need to access post-secondary options. So those are all things we've incorporated into our plan, and they were all kind of key points that were reinforced by different participants in that thought exchange. With that, that is the end of the presentation. We're happy to, I think we're going to now move to a public hearing moment, and then we actually have you all weigh in. Is that right, Board President Griffin? I think that's right.
I was going to ask if there are any questions, clarifying questions at this point. Before we move to the hearing. Okay, there does not appear to be a hand. So at this point, we'll open a public hearing on the LCAP for 21 through 24. The hearing is now open. Who is running the timer and monitoring comments? Do we have any public to speak, wishing to speak?
We have the timer.
So we have no comments.
No comments.
Okay, well, we'll close the public hearing then. Okay, thank you. Now, does the board have any other comments or questions related to the LCAP? Trustee Hanley.
I thought, we've talked about this as President Griffin mentioned a number of times over the last, 4 months or so. But I thought these documents have really improved the accessibility of the LCAP to the public. I mean, I've been pretty vocal over the years about how inaccessible the LCAP is to the average person. And I think, the range of documents, kind of breaking down the goals and breaking down what's in the LCAP into more digestible pieces is progress. I think, people can look at it and get an idea of where we're trying to go. And so I think, I think this is a good move. I went through most of them. There's one of these, I think it's, let me see if I can pull it up quickly here. The accountability plan, when it got translated to a PDF, part of it is cut off. Like the graphs that start in 2016 and go 2017, and then it's like cut off.
We'll
if you
fix those for the last one. Yeah, we'll fix. I didn't realize
yeah,
that.
so if you could go back and fix those so that it's like the other half of the page is not visible there. If you could go back and fix that, that would be great. But you know, I thought some of the things that they were a little bit more accessible. It's still long, and it's still, the LCAP itself is still long, and it's still a little bit tough to read if you're not an education wonk. But it's a little bit better than the previous ones have been, which were absolutely impossible to deal with for anybody who wasn't an education wonk, and even if you were a wonk, it was pretty difficult. The one thing that I don't think we discussed so much that caught my eye was the proposal to have kind of a just-in-time kind of 24-hour tutoring, online tutoring thing. Could you talk about that a little bit more? Because I spaced out on it at one point, or we didn't discuss it that much. But could you talk about what your plan is for that and how that's going to work?
Yeah, it would be a relationship with a vendor. So it's an organization called tutor.com that we actually just met with them earlier today. And so basically they're owned by the Princeton Review. There's a few competing solutions, but we've chosen this one for now. And basically we purchase a number of sessions. You'll actually be seeing a contract on the 24th for the relationship with them for next year. But basically they provide 24/7 online in English or Spanish. In basically, I think in, like, just as an example, in math, it goes through multivariable calculus they can give you tutoring on. And so you basically, as a student, log in, you have use your district email, you go to this website, and then it basically, you can either do a chat or a phone or a verbal interaction with this tutor at any time of the day. It was interesting because we were looking at a report today on student usage, and there was a number of sessions that were at like 1 or 2 in the morning on Sunday night. And so, but that's when students use the tool. So that's, I think, an amazing sort of change, right, from our kind of traditional brick and mortar approach to supporting kids, you know, in the library after school. We are in the process of also evaluating that sort of scheme, and we'll be coming back in the next meeting about some ideas about that we want to move forward with on that as well. But that's the basic idea of the 24/7 tutoring. Hopefully does that answer.
Does it have a way of kind of linking it back to the teacher or the classroom teacher, so that the classroom teacher gets a report that, you know, this phoned in or chatted in to get tutoring on this particular problem? Or
Yep. Yeah, it can do both that. There's a report on the specific example, then it can aggregate that into some analytics around, these are some areas we're seeing broadly as being issues that students are needing some support around. So yeah, it actually does, it can do both things. I think we're gonna have to build some muscles around how we use that information in a way, because we've never really had that feedback loop from tutors to teachers, unless it was random kind of engagement. But this is it's a real opportunity for us to really connect, you know, secondary support to the regular classroom teacher.
Because I think in terms of, as we're going forward and we're particularly looking at accelerating learning, you know, this could be something that could be very positive for us. But I think it needs to be linked to classroom teaching also, so that there's follow-up, and I think the analytics part is also a good asset to have with that, so that if there's a certain area where you're seeing a need to reteach, you know, a particular part of the curriculum, that shows up, and you can go back. But anyway, that was something that jumped out at me when I was going through it to prepare, and I hadn't focused on it before.
Trustee Andrade Zuniga.
sorry, I could not unmute. So on some of the slides, I just wanted to know the how. For example, for improvement of teacher of color perception, things like that. Is it, and then also with what was it? I think it was like something around the anti-racism work. Is that related to what we're doing with Julia? And then, so I guess I wanted to know a little bit more of the how things were happening.
And so with regard to faculty of color, I mean, we have more work to do in this area, and I think we need to continue to sort of build out what exactly it looks like. But as an example, when we met with our African-American faculty earlier this year, we identified an organization called the Black Teacher Project, where we're connecting them to and actually paying for them to participate in a summer institute. So that's just one example of things that we know we need to do. And we also want to listen to them and hear from them what they actually need before we sort of make a bunch of plans. So I think that's, but the key here is that we've got some resources to kind of bring to bear on that kind of support, which sort of affinity-based support to the extent that that's wanted by folks. And obviously our teachers will also continue to participate in all the professional learning that we engage in this next year and in the differentiated ways that we deliver it. You asked one other thing and I'm not remembering what it was now.
One other
Is that
thing.
it? I thought you
Well,
asked
it's
another
just
thing.
more of the how, and no, and
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
glad that you're listening to what people are, what people need. It's not just assumption or just like a plan from you. It's good
Right.
to hear what other people's opinions are. So thank you. And then maybe we can talk a little bit more in depth. Thanks.
And I think the last thing, so the anti-racist teaching thing is the work with Trust and Saphir, just to be clear.
Trustee Land.
Well, just as Superintendent Skelly said, this is a culmination of all the work. So I wanted to acknowledge all the hard work and all the presentations that you've done and all the questions that we asked, and just really nicely put together for you and your team. So Brian, thank you.
Okay. One comment, you don't necessarily have to respond. The thought exchange is kind of hard to describe. And I know I got used to it. My exposure was with the unity and the community, and it's kind of artificial intelligence. And I think it was probably a good tool here to introduce people to what the LCAP is about. And you don't have to be a wonk to actually begin to understand what's important to you and how you share your attitudes and how you focus in as a group on what you have and what brings you together and maybe what's are outliers and stuff. So I really like that, and I hope that we can use that more so that people will be able to just kind of, well, it's not the LCAP, it's what we're trying to do here in this district. What's important to us, how we're gonna get academic achievement, how we're gonna bring everybody up to a certain level. So anyway, that was a comment. It's a good presentation. Appreciate all the hard work. Unless Superintendent has some comments, we're going to move on. He doesn't have any comments, so we'll move on to L3, presentation of the tentative budget for 21-22.
Before Mr. Hawkins starts talking, then it'd be our purpose to bring this item back, the LCAP, and then the budget just the way you've seen it tonight for the 24th. So we're not going to prepare any more presentation or anything like that. We'll just have it there, and hopefully we can approve it very quickly, provided there's no huge change in the budget, Mr. Hawkins. So with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Superintendent Skelly. That's always my goal, is no huge changes. So hopefully we'll move forward with that. All right. As we pull up the presentation, I'll take the opportunity. As a lot of you guys noted, this takes an enormous amount of work. And in the business office, that means the work done by Valerie Miller and Vanessa Castano. And so I just wanted to say thank you so much to them for all their hard work, and to Rose Chai on finalizing this and getting this together. So with that out of the way, where we are here, On June 10th is the tentative 2021-2022 tentative budget. As noted, we'll bring the final budget for consideration on June 24th. But this is the culmination of much discussion as we went through the year. And our last meeting in May with the study session, the budget you see in front of you is very similar to that. I'll note on a couple of the changes as we move forward, but it is very similar to that May budget study session. A couple of the themes moving into the budget are the continuing impacts of COVID. And that leads into the one-time funding and expenditures, primarily related to COVID and the related need for extended learning opportunities for many of our students. The second is the uncertainty around our secured taxes, specifically our commercial property. So we're going to be monitoring that very closely over the next months and years. And the last is the increasing pressures of driven benefits, specifically retirement and the unemployment rates on our long-term planning. So next slide, please. In our presentation tonight, we'll go over our budget guidelines. I'll give you a little bit of an update on the May revise. We didn't have information of that when we had the study session in May. We'll go over the 2021-22 budget assumptions and do a summary of enrollment, staffing, the impact of the retirement rates, CalSTRS and CalPERS, just an overall look at the one-time COVID-19 relief funds, do a quick look at the changes. There haven't been too many since the May budget study session, and look at a summary of the estimated actuals and the tentative budgets. And lastly, we'll go over next steps, including finalizing that budget on the June 24th agenda. Next slide, please. Every year, we follow budget guidelines, which have been included in the narrative that was included in the packet. Just to hit a couple of key areas. Number one, budget guideline is to develop a budget that aligns with our district goals and priorities. A couple other things to hit on. Number two, be careful with one-time funding. We talk about this a lot, and this is the most one-time funding we've seen in my career and potentially in the last 40 plus years. So really focusing on that, and that contracts and positions should be approved by the board. And so those will be continue to happen in that. Next slide, please. We continue to just go over some summaries of some of the guidelines, but one thing to focus on here is that categoricals should be self-sustainable. And I just want to read that last point. I think it's important. The district must ensure that it's able to meet its financial commitments each year and temper the desire to innovate and invest in new priorities or provide raises with clear evaluation of the district's current and anticipated fiscal condition. So that's always when we look at commitments that we're making in developing the budget. We're looking not only at the current, but also at the anticipated future fiscal condition. Next slide, please. The governor puts out his May revision to his January budget by the 10th of May every year. There's a lot of significant proposals in the May revise, but most of them don't impact us as a community funded district. I'll just hit on a couple high points from his proposals. The first is a statutory COLA, or cost of living adjustment of 1.7% for the 2021-2022 year. There's one program, special education funding, that's proposed for a 4% cost of living adjustment compound related to the 2020-21 year and 2021-22 year, because no adjustment was made in 2021. The governor recommends and proposes that we put investments into the educator workforce, and that's through various educator workforce programs. He also proposes additional new grants for reopening schools and expanded learning grants. And I want to focus actually on what's not in the governor's proposal, and that's no additional relief related to the increase of retirement rates, CalSTRS and CalPERS, as well as no relief for the increased unemployment rate, which increased over 1% in the 2021-22 year, but I'll get into that as we move forward. Just to be clear, these are proposals. The legislature is working and passed their budget, and now it'll get, and the governor and the legislature will negotiate the differences in their plans and move forward for a prior to June 30th approval of the state budget. Next slide, please. When looking at the most important assumptions that we used going in, the board has seen most of these, but this is all in one place. I'll just hit on a couple of the high notes. Assessed valuation growth and secured taxes is estimated currently at 4%. The tracker from San Mateo County currently has it at 3.83%. We'll continue to monitor that. When we look at enrollment, we look at relatively flat enrollment, a little bit of a decline of a little less than 1%. The projections, although we are monitoring those enrollment numbers daily as we get into the summer and as we get closer to fall. We've included a salary increase in the projections of 2% to all units, along with the normal step and column increase of approximately 1.2%. I want to hit on just a couple of these areas around driven costs around our employee benefit costs. The first is our PERS rate. The PERS rate is set at 22.91%. That's a little over a 2% increase from the 2020-2021 rates. So every one of our classified employees will cost an additional 2% in 21-22. The CalSTRS rate, it was noted as proposed when this was finalized. You get in breaking news, that's no longer proposed. That has been enacted by the CalSTRS board. One change from prior years is the CalSTRS board now has limited authority to increase that rate above the statutory level. And this year was the first year they've had that, and they used it to increase that rate to 16.92%, an increase of a little under 1%. So all certificated employees with the CalSTRS rate increase cost about 1% more in 21-22. The last number that I'll hit on is the unemployment insurance rate of 1.23%. While that might seem low, for the last 10 years, that rate has been 0.05%. So there's an increase of 1.2% overall. And this cost to the district is well over $1 million for the next year. This is directly related to COVID and the unemployment insurance pool being basically completely depleted, and the need to increase that pool back up to the level. But as noted in the governor's proposal, there is no proposal to give school districts relief from either of those three rate increases in COVID. Next slide, please. We talked about enrollment projections. Enrollment is relatively flat, showing a slight decrease of a little under 1% projected in 2021, 2022. Our projections show this trend continuing over the next 5 years, with that trend accelerating as we get into the late 2020s. But I think this is just something that we continue to monitor as a community funded district from a financial standpoint. Enrollment impacts us a little differently than other districts. Next slide, please. We've included the staffing projections from 1920, 2021, and as we move into 21-22, the staffing is basically the same as we had in the May work study, and relatively flat over year. The only real difference is related to some classified staffing, half of it relating to special education paraprofessionals, related to one additional IEP needs coming in for new students, specifically ninth graders, as well as paraprofessionals that are included in the ELO grant that the board approved the spending plan. The other half of that is related to some COVID staffing and health aides. Those right now are placeholders if needed, and we will only hire those if needed, and those would be covered by categorical one-time funds related to COVID relief. Next slide, please. I talked about the STRS rate, about high level, about 2/3 of our employees compensation is in certificated compensation. So when we look at the STRS rate, this impacts all of our certificated staff. The rate is 16.92%, as you can see. That has been increasing steadily from 2013-14, when it was about 8%, 8.25%, and it's now at 16.92%. The 2 years, 2021 and 21-22, are artificially low because the state made a buy down of those rates on behalf of school districts for those 2 years. But back in 2022, 2023, the statutory rates will be back, and it'll be at 19.1% in 22-23, unless the legislature and the governor act on that moving. So that's just to be clear, that's a over 2% increase projected in 2022, 2023 for all of our certificated staff. Next slide, please. PERS, you're seeing a very similar increase over that time period, from a little over 11% back in 14-15. We're at 22.9%. Again, that has been artificially bought down by a state investment in 2020, 2021, and 2021, 2022. We'll see a large increase of approximately 3% in the PERS rate projected for 2022, 2023. One difference to always remember is that the PERS rate is set by the PERS board, while the STRS rate is set by the legislature, with the exception of these small adjustments that the STRS board may now make that I noted before. Next slide, please. We went over this slide at the May study session, but I wanted to bring it up for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's a summary of the one-time COVID relief funds, both state and federal. Most of these funds have been expended or committed, including the ELO grant that the board approved the spending plan in at I believe the May 20th board meeting. The only difference between that schedule is we now have a projected entitlement for the ESSER 3 grant. That's part of the $1.9 trillion Federal Relief Act that was passed by Congress earlier this year. And it will be included in the 21-22 budget as soon as we can add it to the state budget software. Just really focusing on, this is a lot of one-time money, and we really need to spend it in a way that's impactful for students, but also in a way that acknowledges the nature of that money at one time, and that it will go away after next year. Next slide, please. There have been some relatively small changes since the budget study session. The three biggest areas I would note is the workers' compensation rate has been set by the San Mateo Schools Insurance Group. That was a relatively small increase of about 0.15%, but that is about $171,000 impact to the district. Our property and liability, we talked about it before, but the final rates are up about $60,000 above the initial projection, as well as some investments in sustainability. The largest increase that you'll see there, I just want to notice, is the STRS on behalf payment. To be clear, this is an in and out that we don't see at the district level. We just get projections from the state. There's no net impact of this as it is an equal revenue and expenditure, but it is $1 million. So I thought I would note it. Next slide, please. Overall, this is the last two columns are our estimated actuals, as well as our for 2020, 2021, as well as our 2021, 2022 tentative public hearing budget. And as noted at the end of the year, our projected fund balance is a little over the 12% required amount by the school board. Next slide, please. Lastly, so where we go from here? What are our next steps? At the June 24th meeting, staff will bring forward a proposed budget and LCAP to be passed before June 30th, the requirement under Ed Code. We'll continue to monitor the county office, the San Mateo County Assessed Valuation Tracker. We continue to manage our COVID-19 one-time funds as we implement specifically the ELO grant and those ESSER funds that we discussed. We're looking to finalize negotiations with our labor partners. And in the fall, we'll look at our final enrollment in staffing, as that's the biggest driver of our expenditures. Kind of lastly, overall, our next steps and goals are to manage our fund balance and financial resources to maintain long-term fiscal solvency and stability. You'll always hear that from me. And specifically to this year, given the huge amounts of COVID-19 relief funding, we need to always resist using one-time money to justify ongoing expenditures at this point. All right. We can pull that down, and I'm happy to open it up to questions from the board.
I have one comment right now. Where was the cartoon?
The cartoon.
Where was something that lightened it up a little bit to start with, so we didn't,
President Griffin, I was hoping that my charming personality was going to lighten up the presentation, but now I know that I need a little bit more than that, and so I will endeavor to improve my my jokes.
I'm sure Valerie and Vanessa know where the joke file is with all the old jokes that Liz. She probably recycled some that we weren't even paying. We were laughing, and she was putting the same jokes up there every couple of years. So it was a good presentation. I was looking for the joke and the punchline. So does the board have any questions or comments? Trustees Lees-Dwyer.
I'm going to unmute. I'm going to take my hand down because I don't like looking at the hand. Okay, so given everything that you said about one-time money, so then that means that every new position is in the budget and all positions are funded with ongoing resources, right?
I would say primarily that is correct. There are some positions related to one-time money, but those are very specifically identified in the budget as one-time. I noted those potential health-related positions. We added some health aides on temporary agreements this year. We've included those in the budgets depending on the guidance from California Department of Public Health and the San Mateo County Public Health Office. And so those would be funded using either the ESSER grants or potentially with the state grants, if approved, that was proposed by the governor. The board approved some additional sections at each campus under the ELO grant, as well as a few other positions, as well as the required 10% to be used on paraprofessionals on that grant. So those positions either will go away, like the sections and some of the positions like that. The paraprofessionals actually is a mix between things that we will include moving forward and not include moving forward. The ones moving forward would be anything as required by an IEP as a required paraprofessional. Those positions
Makes
would
sense.
continue. But the vast majority have been taken out when you see the multi-year projection on the June 24th budget.
So I mean, we have been getting on the personnel, on the personnel list, if it's a position that wasn't budgeted, it's identified. So I'm assuming you intend to include that, continue that practice.
Correct.
Okay, good, because it's good, you know, that way we can ask questions or figure it out. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
That was easy.
I mean, the question, and I think kind of ties in, you know, there's the economy and housing and everything in the peninsula and the district is kind of in a weird space, and a lot of people wait till school's over to move. And when we've seen drops in in ADA, it's usually, you know, magically between June and enrollment time. Do we have, or how much flexibility do we have if the enrollment isn't where it needs to be in terms of how are we going to manage the staffing ratios, or are we kind of committed to the staffing at this point?
So thank you, President Griffin. That's a great question. We are committed to a vast majority of our staffing. On the certificated side, the March 15th deadline has passed. And so we have very little flexibility with the exception of not hiring open positions moving into that. Classified, we have a little bit more flexibility. We have the 60-day ed code related to that. So, but I think you were focusing on the certificated staffing. So we continue to monitor that. I noted that we look at that almost daily in terms of our enrollment. And if our enrollment at a certain site isn't meeting with our projections that we staffed at, we're definitely looking at that staffing need very closely if they have any open positions to say, do they truly need that if their enrollment numbers aren't as high as the projections.
And we still got the $1.5 million in the contra account for reassessments.
Correct.
Okay. That's all I have. Anybody, any other questions? Okay, the budget comes back the 24th, and we'll we have another opportunity to ask some questions, but we'll be acting on it on the 24th, and absent some significant changes, this is what it is. And I encourage anybody who has questions to get hold of Yancey and ask them before the 24th. So thank you. L4, public hearing on reserves in excess of minimum reserve requirements.
Thank you. This is a standard item that we bring every year related to the reserve cap that was enacted, 5 or 6 years ago now. We are not subject to the reserve cap, given that we are a community-funded school district. And so we're not subject to that requirement, but we are subject to the transparency requirements. And so this is a standard thing that we do every year. Happy to open it up to any questions.
Well, I think we're going to hold a public hearing. I'm going to open the public hearing. And are there any public wishing to speak on this item? Was that a no?
No.
That's correct.
Okay, sorry. Okay, we'll close the public hearing on L4 and we'll move on to L5. Consider approval of the Education Protection Account Spending Plan and the adoption of the resolution.
So again, this is a standard thing we do with the budget every year under Proposition 30, and then as extended by Proposition 55. The acceptance of the EPA or educational protection account funds that we receive of approximately $200 per ADA come with this requirement. So this is a requirement of that acceptance. It's used in a similar way that it has been used in the past. And I'm happy to open it up to any questions.
Are there any questions? If not, is there a motion?
I make a motion to accept that.
Is there a second?
Second,
Okay, we got Trustee Lamb with the motion, Trustee Hanley with the second, Trustee Andrade Zuniga, how do you vote?
Yes.
Trustee Land,
Yes.
Trustees Lees, Dwyer,
Yes.
Trustee Hanley,
yes,
I'll vote yes, and that's 5-0 to pass the resolution and approve the plan. We will move on to L5, so then we go into NOAM, so we move to Division of Human Resources N1, Personnel Action.
Yes, we have the personnel actions and addendum with 3 recognitions tonight. Daniel Salamini, math teacher at Cappuccino, is going to retire at the end of June or June 29th. He's been with the district for 18 years. Bettina Graft, our district-wide counselor and restorative justice facilitator, submitted her retirement May 28th, and she's been with the district for 15 years. And Maureen Holster, a counseling student service assistant at Burlingame High School, will retire on June 30th after 22 years and 5 months in the district.
Is there a motion?
I
Any
move
comments?
approval.
Okay, so we got Trustees Lees, Dwyer with the motion, Trustee Lamb with the second, Trustee Andrade Zuniga, how do you vote?
Yes.
Trustee Land,
Yes.
Trustee Lees, Dwyer,
Yes.
Trustee Hanley,
yes,
I'll vote yes, and the personnel actions pass 5-0. Approval of a revised job description for physical education coordinator in N2.
Yes, this is one of our curriculum coordinator positions. We needed to revise this for the physical education. The duties have been revised, but the salary is the same, and it's the same for all of our curriculum coordinators.
Is there a motion?
I move approval.
Second.
Okay, we have Trustees Lees, Dwyer with the motion, Trustee Lamb with the second, Trustee Andrade Zuniga, how do you vote?
Yes.
Trustee Land,
Yes.
Trustee Lees, Dwyer,
Yes.
Trustee Hanley,
yes,
and Trustee Griffin, I'll vote yes. That's 5-0 on N2. N3, review, discuss, and approve job description for the Bridge Program newcomer teacher.
Yes, our bridge program continues to evolve. We're very proud of it. Dr. Showman has created a job description to specify the duties. We have Dr. Showman here if there are any questions for this job description.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Could I ask, did we not have a job description before, or is this an amended one? I couldn't quite tell.
It's an amended one because the one we had was specific to math, and this is for social science.
Okay, thank you.
That was the only change.
So is that Trustee Lamb with the motion and Trustees Lees, Dwyer with the second?
Sure.
Yep.
Okay, Trustee Andrade Zuniga, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Trustee Land,
Yes.
Trustee Lees, Dwyer,
Yes.
Trustee Hanley,
Yes,
I'll vote yes, and that's 5-0. N4, review, discuss, and approve the revised job description for instructional coach.
We revised this job description in anticipation of our induction program. So there's a section on the job description for induction mentor.
I make a
Okay,
motion to accept.
okay, is there a second?
second,
Okay, Trustee Lamb with the motion, Trustee Hanley with the second, Trustee Andrade Zuniga, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Trustee Land,
Yes.
Trustee Lees, Dwyer,
Yes.
Trustee Hanley,
yes,
I'll vote yes, and that passes 5-0. Review, discuss, and approve the job description for the new position of New position of college and career readiness coordinator.
Yes, this is a new job description. Mr. Simmons mentioned this on the LCAP presentation, and we have Mr. Simmons if there's any questions on the job description.
Does any board have any questions or comments? If not, is there a motion?
Move approval.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Trustee Hanley with the motion, trustee Land with the second, trustee Andrade Zuniga,
Vote yes.
trustee Land,
Yes.
trustee Leesdwyer,
Yes.
trustee Hanley,
Yes.
trustee Griffin will vote yes. That's 5-0 to approve the job description. N6, approval of the resolution for reduction of classified services.
The adult school reorganized their programs last summer, and this 9-hour-a-week position was no longer needed. There was legislation, however, that delayed any layoffs until June 30th of this year. So if the board approves this resolution, there'll be 60 days until this layoff would go in effect. We're working both with the employee and the association to look for other possibilities.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
We are, I see we've already approved a bunch of new positions for instructional assistants. So would the person currently in that role possibly have the opportunity to continue with the district in a different position?
Yes, she's open to it. It's a decision whether this employee wants to work more hours, given where she's at. So she'll have 60 days to contemplate that. But absolutely, she's eligible
That's
for
good.
instructional
I
aid
mean,
positions.
that's what we should always encourage that.
Yes.
I move
Okay.
approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
Okay,
Let
trustee
Peter do it.
Leesdwyer with the motion, trustee Hanley with the second, trustee Andrade Zuniga, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Trustee Land,
Yes.
trustees Leesdwyer,
Yes.
trustee Hanley,
Yes.
I'll vote yes, and that resolution will pass 5-0, and we hope that will work out for the employee and the district. So, N7, approval of the MOU between the Alameda County Office of Ed and the San Mateo Union High School District.
Yes, one of our teachers is an expert at expository reading and writing, and she, in her off time, works for the Alameda County Office of Education, helping them with trainings in reading and writing. And this is the second year in a row that she's done that. In order, because she's an employee with our district working for Alameda County, we're asking the board to approve this again this year.
I make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, so trustee Land with the motion, trustee Hanley with the second, trustee Andrade Zuniga, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Trustee Land,
Yes.
trustee Leesdwyer,
Yes.
trustee Hanley,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes, and that motion passes 5-0. N8, approve the revised 2021 miscellaneous salary schedule.
Yes, another revision of the miscellaneous salary schedule. This time, we added the board interpreter onto the schedule. Thank you for that. And then also the adult school instruction non-certificated hourly rate.
I'll move approval.
Okay,
Second.
so trustee Hanley with the motion, trustee Land with the second, trustee Andrade Zuniga, how do you vote?
Yes.
Trustee Land,
Yes.
trustees Leesdwyer,
Yes.
trustee Hanley,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes, and N8 passes 5-0. N9, approve 3 new non-represented administrative contracts for the 21-22 school year. Dr. Black, do you have anything to say before I read the required salary information?
Dr. Skelly mentioned that we have 3 new administrators this year, and these are those these are the contracts with those individuals, and we need to read the terms publicly.
Okay. Okay, administrative position, salary and benefits for the 21-22 school year. The following are the compensation terms for the 3 new district non-represented administrator positions. Each administrator will receive health and welfare benefits up to $24,301, transportation and cell phone reimbursements of $275 per month, various subscriptions and memberships, reimbursement for approved district expenses. Laura Berlin, Assistant Director of Special Ed, salary $174,634, $174,634, 222 work days. Harkarat Kira Mann, Assistant Director of Adult and Career Education, salary $159,579, 222 work days. Margarita Navarro, Assistant Principal 2, San Mateo High School, salary $185,566, 215 work days. So we need approval of those contracts.
I move approval.
Is there a second? I'll second it. So Trustee Hanley made the motion. President Griffin made the second. Trustee Andrade Zuniga,
Yes.
Trustee Land,
Yes.
Trustees Lees Dwyer,
Yes.
Trustee Hanley,
Yes.
Trustee Griffin, yes. Motion for the contracts passes 5-0. There's nothing under Division of Instructional Services, our student services, our business services. So we're down to board operations, R1, the California School Board Annual Conference. Dr. Skelly.
Yeah, this is an event that's happened every year except for last year. And once again, I think there'll be interest among board members to attend. As you can see, there's a virtual version as well as a in-person version. And so you need to approve this per board policy.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, Trustee Lamb with the motion, Trustees Lees Dwyer with the second, Trustee Andrade Zuniga,
Oh, yes.
Trustee Lamb,
Yes.
Trustees Lees Dwyer,
Yes.
Trustee Hanley.
Yes.
I'll vote yes, and the motion passes 5-0. R2, proposed new schedule for California Voting Rights Act hearings. Dr.
Just
Skelly.
on this piece, just to go back to the CSBA, we are registering people. It is my plan to attend. I don't know what other board members, what the board members' thoughts are at this point about December of next year. It looks like Greg, you're in, and then, but let us know, and we can handle the arrangements and as much of it as we can.
And also, I'm a delegate assembly person, so I do the day earlier.
Right.
Just so Shar knows.
Yeah. Okay. We'll get something out to you and ask these questions. It's not necessary that you make a decision tonight. That's for sure.
Okay.
This is a change in what the dates for the board to consider to have public hearings related to the California Voting Rights Act that we've discussed throughout the year. It should work well. It should work just as well as before, but we need to get you to approve it.
Okay. What day of the weeks are those hearings?
They're Thursday. They're Thursdays like other nights.
So these are regularly scheduled board meetings. So we're gonna hold these as part of regularly scheduled board meetings.
That would be the idea.
Okay.
People have typically found that if you do these as separate items, it's not something that the public is particularly interested in attending. So we believe the best time is to do it while we have a regular board meeting.
Okay.
So do we need an action or is this information?
I think it's fine. You know, we planned the agenda as well in advance. We just want to give you a heads up that it was moving back a little, just given the volume of districts doing this.
Okay. So then we've just got requested board items. Anybody wish to add something to this list? Oh, Trustees Lees Dwyer, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I was getting my hand up so I could do that, and I put my hand up. I would like probably in the fall if possible, a report on all of the COVID money and how we've spent it or are planning to spend it. I'd like the public to see what that all looked like and what we were able to do with it and what we'll do with it next year. So that's what I would like to see.
Okay.
Any other items?
Just that, for the next meeting, can I speak a little bit about the student board rep stuff?
Then we'll see if we can put that on the agenda. I don't know that we'll have a heavy agenda, so we can do that. The one question I actually had on that, and this it's something we can put on the list. We know who the new board members are going to be next year, correct? The student board reps.
I don't think so.
I don't think we do yet.
Okay. Whenever we do we give them an orientation with that?
Ms. Chalkley gives them a, sort of a roundabout. Yes, she meets with them and interfaces with them as part of the UASB meeting. But I think based on my conversations with Ms. Andrade Zuniga, she'd like us to consider some other ways to get student input. And she and I have talked about some other ideas that we have.
And I have some input from other students as well. I read through the bylaws and I think I've got some ideas of how we can engage the students a little bit better. So yeah, I can elaborate more the next meeting.
One thing, when we do get whoever we identify, they ought to at least, and I don't know if we give them that board policy that tells them sets the expectations, but we ought to be sure to make sure they have it. So that's part of their orientation. So.
Right, that's definitely part of it.
So anyway, it looks like we're at the end of the agenda. We appreciate the superintendent hanging in here for the whole meeting. So enjoy the rest of your vacation, and I'm out of here. Good night.
No more tennis, Kevin.
Right. Yeah. Careful with tennis.
You only have one good eye left.